And today joining me is current council member and candidate Zach Oyler.
Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. Thanks
nice
for
to be here.
Thanks for being here. I want to go ahead and start. Yesterday, the mayor gave the State of the City address. He gave a very optimistic tune for where the city is and where it could go in 2019. Obviously, we know there are also challenges that the city is facing. I'd probably say crime and pension reform are two of the biggest ones because that's impacting a lot of other areas. But for you, where would you say right now the state of the city is, and what areas in which do you think that can still be improved and you would be able to help in that, given the chance to continue to serve on the council?
Yeah, obviously we spend a lot of time, especially around the horseshoe, talking about the challenges, which I'll get into in a minute. But just to touch on the state of the city yesterday, I think that Mayor Artis hit some good highlights that I'd like to reiterate. First of all is we need a sense of optimism right now, because we do spend a lot of time talking about the challenges, and not to downplay some of the things that are going on that we're going to talk about, but we've also got to reinvigorate and build this sense of community pride. And as we embark on this effort to rediscover our identity here with changes that have happened with our employment situation the last couple of years and our economic condition, but we've really got to get people coming together and telling a positive story of what's going on in the community and starting to highlight some of those things as well. And the other thing that I liked that the mayor did is he concluded yesterday's address was challenging everyone to think about what are you doing to build Peoria and to encourage Peoria and promote it. And we all have opportunities and we all have different places that we can get involved and be a part of this community, and we should, each one of us, take some contribution towards owning that. And second part of your question being challenges, I mean, our economy is still struggling. We're really dealing with some long-term financial issues, especially pensions and the mandates that come out of Springfield. And as we continue to lose businesses and residents, it's having a larger and larger impact on our financial ability to operate city government. And that's a big focus of what you'll continue to hear me talking about during the campaign, and what I've been talking about for quite some time is our economic development plan. How do we grow this economy and generate additional revenue that's not just continuing to go back to the taxpayers every budget cycle and say, we've got to charge you a new tax and fee.
And speaking of that, you were obviously on the council. I've asked all of the candidates here about this. You kind of alluded to it there in your answer, but looking at that decision that you all were faced with, a multi-million-dollar deficit, do you raise fees? Do you cut police and fire? What are your thoughts on where you landed in that conversation? Now that we're 2 months away, would you reconsider, or do you think that you landed exactly where, and if that were to happen again, how would you approach that conversation?
My feelings are no different today than they were when we took the vote on the budget, and I voted against it because we cannot continue to tax and fee our way out of our fiscal issues. You know, I have a background in real estate, and somebody comes to me with a pre-approval to buy a house, and they're looking at our region, not just our city. And in the city of Peoria, when you've already got a stormwater fee that other cities don't have, now we're talking about this pension fee that just got passed that I voted against in the budget. That's an additional fee that people are going to get in the mail. And those are all costs that are taken into consideration when it comes to buying a house. And we're on this path now that our revenues are declining, our expenses are increasing, and continuing to go to the taxpayers year after year and saying pay more money. That's just a reason to leave. And that's exactly what's happening, is that people are leaving, and that's causing an even greater fiscal problem. And as we have more businesses that leave, more people that leave, we don't need the same level of service. You know, we'd all love to have an officer on every corner and as many firefighters on the department as that we can handle, but it's an affordability issue, and we have to get very serious about the challenges in front of us and how we're going to address it.
What would you tell the people right now to start 2018? I know there's a lot more into police and fire than murder, but to start off this year already, we're looking at 5. We're looking at 5 cases of people who have been killed. What would you tell the people who believe that can coincide with having less officers on the street?
We've got other municipalities, and that's one of the things that we get into these discussions, and we've actually have this study that's going on right now that's looking at and balancing our public safety efforts and where's the right amount of people in the right places to cover the city and financially pay the bill. But some of the things that you do during that discussion are benchmark other communities, and studies don't necessarily show that just because you add a bunch more people out on the force that it's going to change the amount of crime or the number of murders in this case. We have to do more on the baseline level. The resident officer program is a huge thing, in my opinion, that we've got to focus on, is getting residents that have a working relationship with what's going on in the neighborhood, and also giving the children in the neighborhood somebody to look up to. And I've been really disappointed as we've continued to see the development of the labor contracts allowing officers to live outside and firefighters to live outside of the city of Peoria, and not just those groups but other city staff, that we lose that involvement and engagement in our neighborhoods. And when I'm showing somebody a house and they see a squad car sitting in a driveway that somebody lives there, it's, well, makes me feel like this is a safer place to be. And as we're losing our city staff to other communities around us, you're missing that piece of the equation. And we really need to push that trend back the other way and work through some of the negotiations and efforts that we could put in place to have our city staff living in the city of Peoria, as well as continuing to expand this resident officer program so that you have those relationships and there's a quicker response time and there's a quicker outlet for people to say, hey, I saw something, this concerns me, I know that Officer Joe Paul Jones lives down the street from me, I'm going to give him a call and have him keep an eye out on what's going on.
What kind of impact do you think that could have? You're talking about requiring and encouraging more police and fire to live within the city, to be within the communities and living within the communities, rather, that they serve. What kind of impact do you think that could have on police and community trust? That's a big conversation right now. We've had a few studies, reports coming out, and particularly within the black community, a lot of people have said that there's a lack of trust. I know the police officers have added the body cameras and hoping that that helps as well, obviously for transparency. What else do you think can be done, or do you think that solution would help within the trust issues between the community and police? Do you think there are trust issues?
I think there absolutely are, and I hear that on a somewhat regular basis, and that's why I think, what I was commenting about the resident officer program and building those relationships at a young age is critically important to what's happening in our environment here. And as people get more into the video games and TV and those type of things, and you see the shootings and the stuff that's going on, it starts to cause this divide. Well, I don't want to be a police officer, and so you lose that mentorship type attitude that occurred 30 years ago. And as we've continued to lose our staff to other communities, I think that a lot of that relationship has been lost, and I think that it would go a long way towards helping encourage the trust factor, especially as we try to encourage that to be throughout the community, not just in certain parts of the city, but giving reasons for an officer to live in the south end and the near north side and the east bluff, and I live in the center bluff, and not too far from me is a resident officer, and he attends my neighborhood association meetings and stops and talks to neighbors as he's going through our area, and I think that that's a big piece of that relationship trust factor.
Let's talk about the housing market. This is something that you're familiar with as well. You talked about, when you're showing a house, it's better for you to see an officer living within the house, but we also know that there are possible housing as far as fairness issues within. Your colleague Denise Moore just went to Washington, D.C. for a symposium talking about housing fairness within the city. We've heard from even landlords that say, you know what, it's tough being a landlord within the city for people who live in those. The landlords are tough on us. So what is the current state of our housing situation within the city of Peoria? Do you think that there are some issues that we face there? And then also with your expertise in that, what can be done to kind of ameliorate and ease some of those tensions and issues within housing, being able to be housed within the city of Peoria?
There's a multitude of challenges on this topic, and I'll kind of start in the middle, which is one of the things that I really like to work in, and that's the renovation environment. And, you know, we have an old housing stock in the city of Peoria, especially south of War Memorial. They require significant investment to get them to a livable point and to continue to maintain them. And in some cases, you're looking towards a developer, a landlord, somebody that flips houses to consider doing those. But as our housing prices have declined, it becomes less and less financially feasible to do that. And you're seeing, especially in the South End and the near North Valley, and in some cases the East Bluff, once a house is deteriorated to a certain point, an owner, whether it be a private owner-occupied dwelling or something that's been rented out, they're walking away from it because the return isn't worth the investment. And you get into things like thousands of dollars worth of windows, $5,000 in heating and cooling, several thousand for a new roof, and you quickly meet or exceed the cost of the house itself. And so it's become a challenging environment to get people to want to come in and put the money and work into these places when you could go to another part of town and have a better return, and B, the price to buy the residence has come down so much that it's closely comparable. And one of the things that I've brought up as we've had some of these forum discussions is that I'd really like to see us put some emphasis on having the trades go into some of these houses and have a training program that renovates older homes, so that we're not only teaching people a skill, but we're also turning a property back into a useful life again, and restarting that life cycle on that property so that it doesn't result in the city having to take possession and tear it down. There's a lot of these all over the city, and I'm sure you've heard the conversation about vacant lots, and that's what happens is we take a house down and we end up with a vacant lot. No longer has any marketable value whatsoever because it's a couple $100,000 to build the new house, and you're not going to find somebody that wants to do that in a neighborhood of $20,000 to $50,000 homes. And so they no longer have any valued use except to the people that are next door.
Last question I want to ask you is this. Obviously, from being an at-large council member, another question I've asked all of the people who've come on is, you're representing 1 through 5 as far as the districts, right? You're representing all people from all different walks of life. What best qualifies you to do that role, to continue in that space as an at-large city council person?
I think one of the most enjoyable aspects of it is I live right smack dab in the center of the city. And so I'm literally minutes from any part of town, so I'm able to easily get to neighborhood association meetings, whether it's in District 1 on the south end or District 5, the furthest point that you can go. And being in the real estate business, I spend a lot of time in every district and am able to see the different challenges that exist. And every area of the city is different and have their own unique challenges, whether it be infrastructure or housing or crime. And it's a unique opportunity to take a step back and look at the whole picture rather than just focused on resources for a specific district. And I really enjoy that neighborhood interaction and being able to go to the different events all over the city. And you know, you can pick any given day of the week and find a half a dozen different things to go to, whether it be a ribbon cutting or a neighborhood association meeting or a fundraiser, and I really enjoy that part of the job.
All right, well, Zach Oyler running for at-large city council to stay on the Horseshoe. Best of luck to you, and thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah.